Okay, so anybody have any questions? Please feel welcome to ask. Okay. Please. Wait, first Bowe had the question. Bowe, you go first. Why don't you come closer then? Okay.
Bhante, I'd just like to know the difference between worldly persons, this I am, and the difference between, that of an arahat, I am, the concept I am. So it's just, one has the object of identification, so this I am. And an arahat is just I am.
The arahat doesn't have I am anymore.
He has the notion. I remember the picture Bhante drew on the board last week, and arahat has, okay.
The anagami,
yeah,
the non-returner.
Right. That I am has no identification, or what's the difference between?
Okay.
So my question is about what Sakaya Ditti, what constitutes.
Yeah, I understand the question. It actually seems to me that this I am is also Sakaya Ditti. Even though the commentary says, to make things neat, the commentary says, this is mine is a reflection of craving, this I am is a reflection of conceit, this is myself as a manifestation of the views. But it seems this I am is also Sakaya Ditti, because one is taking the I am and then is finding a content for it. And so one is identifying I am as being form as I am, feeling as I am, perception. And so when you give a content to I am, then it becomes the view of a self, then it becomes Sakaya Ditti. But what the anagami has is the sense I am, but without giving it a content, without thinking this I am. If you look at that Chachakka Sutta, that's the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 22, Sutta number 89, the monk Chachakka says, for me, for me there is no longer this I am, but I am not an arahat, because there's still found in me a subtle conceit I am, craving I am, an latent tendency to conceit, or a latent tendency I am. So I am without an identification, without a content, seems to be the mark of conceit. Whereas this I am, or I am this, where you're taking the sense of I am and then giving it a content, that I take to be the mark of Sakaya Ditti, of the view of the self. So it's a little, I have to say, even find the commentarial explanation here a little confusing, though it's neat, because it aligns those three phrases with three different defilements. Got it?
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think Allison.
Bhante, our commentary is always confusing.
No, usually they're very, maybe I shouldn't say confusing, because often the commentaries are very helpful, but I'd say maybe a little bit inconsistent there.
Bhante, I have two questions. The first question is, when you talk about Sakaya Ditti, and literally you just, in the class you mentioned it's existing or collections of five aggregates.
Yeah.
So what made you to decide? What made you decide to choose the translation, the origin of identity?
Well, for Sakaya, just identity.
So it literally you just because identity is different. Okay. Then,
Anyway,
okay, I got it. Yeah, I understand.
yeah, the word origination is a different word. I didn't
Okay.
write that on the board. That's just samudaya.
Okay.
Why did I choose identity for Sakaya?
Yes.
It's hard to find any good English translation. Actually, this is the later edition of the Majjhima Nikaya. The early edition, following some of the early Western translators, I used personality, but that's very misleading. Because you think like somebody has a cheerful personality, an aggressive personality, like the character of a person. But Sakaya is not the character or personality. Even now I don't use identity. Now it's a makeshift, the personal entity.
Identity for me, it's a little bit. Identity has a lot of meaning for me. So that's why if you just the collection of aggregates, it's harder for me to directly relate to identity. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, it's not very satisfying.
Okay.
But there is no real good English word that corresponds exactly to Sakaya.
I have another question. It's on page 286, and this maybe is a stupid question, but I have a question about it. When it's
286.
286, section 34, in the middle of a paragraph. It's really loud. I have a question. When one is touched by neither painful or pleasant feeling, if one understands as it actually is the origin.
Wait, what page did you say?
Page, I'm sorry, not page, I'm sorry, page 1135.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, it's section 286.
I see, 280. Those are the Polytext Society.
Right. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
it's page
Okay.
1135
Okay, now I see where you-
and
okay.
section 34.
Okay.
And in the middle of the paragraph,
Okay.
it says that here is when one is touched by a neither painful or pleasant feeling, if one understands as it actually is the origination, the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape is regarded to that feeling, and blah, 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 blah. And if you keep reading that, it says then the underlying tendency to ignorance does not lie within. Why only in that neither pleasant or non-pleasant, the words ignorance is introduced. The other two is not.
Actually, ignorance always coexists with lust or craving and with aversion or hatred. So ignorance is really involved with the other two as well. It's just that in the case of a neutral feeling, we could say that ignorance becomes more prominent.
I see. Okay.
So it's a way to sort of isolate ignorance because there's no stimulus, no stimulation here of lust, no stimulation of aversion.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen.
Bhante, I have another question about anusaya and asava. If I have the analogy correct, it's the anusaya are sort of lying dormant, and then when certain mental states arise, these things pop up in the mind.
That seems to be the image.
So
Not so much other mental states, but when particular types of sense stimulation occur. That is what provokes the underlying tendency to come to manifestation. Yeah.
So they can actually be eradicated. It's not that
The
they're...
anusayas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's through some penetrating wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that the same as asavas? And why are they sort of different strata?
It's a good question. I don't think I've ever seen that question discussed in the text. But first, asava was not a term specific and unique to Buddhism. It was already sort of in circulation at the time the Buddha appeared on the scene. And so the Buddha sort of took over that terminology. It was used by the Jains in particular, but with a different sense. I think the Jains use asava to signify the flowing, well, with their own strange conception of karma, as something that is kind of material substance that flows in and defiles the soul. So they use this, they took on the word asava quite literally in the sense of what flows in. And the Buddha picked up that terminology, but then gave it a more psychological meaning as the three asavas of sensuality, craving for existence, and ignorance. But then perhaps he sort of differentiated more the different defilements, because the idea of anusaya, I think, is quite unique and special to the Buddha's teaching. I don't think one finds it in the other contemporary schools of thought. And they aren't exactly the same. One can make certain correlations. Let's see, the kamasava, the asava of sensuality, would correspond. There's a kama raga anusaya. So those two would be identical. Then there is bhavasava, the asava of craving for existence, would correspond to the bhavaraga anusaya, the underlying tendency of lust or attachment to existence. And then the avijjasava would correspond to avijjanusaya, the underlying tendency to ignorance. But there are some of the anusayas, the other anusayas don't have counterparts among the asavas. And what's interesting, particularly in the northern schools, Abhidharma school, that the asavas, as the analytical systems develop, the asavas sort of fade into the background, and then the anusayas get emphasized more. Maybe because that has a wider range than the asavas. So in the Abhidharma Kosha system, the Savastivada Abhidharma, the defilements are pretty much treated in terms of the anusayas rather than the asavas.
Thank you.
Did somebody else have some questions? Okay, Boway has another question.
But actually all defilements are anusaya, right? In a sense, because I cannot be angry or greedy at any moment. So they lie in my mental continuum.
Yeah, you could say that. But
so what's the difference between that 7 anusaya and other defilements?
Why were 7 selected?
Yeah.
And not the others?
They are just major ones, right? Because in a sense, any defilement is...
It's lying dormant until it's activated. Yeah, why those 7 were selected? I don't know, it's always an interesting question. I never find any text discuss them. Why are there 5 hindrances? Why are there 10 fetters? Why choose 10 of these, 5 of these? Why take just 7 factors and call them anusayas? I don't know. Maybe all I can say is that they have some prominence and function.
Thank you. Another question
Yeah.
is,
Is Sandy reading a novel? Oh, I see. Oh, that was a useful chart. Maybe I should send it out, because some people, you have it from, when did that go back to? About 2010, something like that?
You gave it out twice, one in Bodhi Monastery, one
Yeah.
was here in the words of Buddha. And it's downloadable from Bodhi Monastery website.
Hmm. But I'll ask them to send it out to everybody on the registration. Let me make a mental note of that. Okay, please.
when I have painful feeling, I may find something else. I cannot watch it objectively, so I'll maybe look for something to get myself released. But when they say don't enforce the feeling. But usually, for example, if I feel depressed, I might go reading a novel. So those kind of activities are not encouraged, right? Because they would enforce that.
I wouldn't say don't read novels. But
just as example.
I mean, sometimes one has to do something to, at a practical level, something to relax the mind and take the mind off troubling situations. But what I would say is that when one is in the particular framework of contemplation, then when pain comes up, then not to try to let the mind slip away from the pain, or displeasure comes into the mind, but to look at it, and rather than just run away from it, but to look at it and observe it. And then one weakens the tendency to aversion towards that pain or unpleasant feeling.
My question is actually about my personal experience. For example, whenever I feel sad, I might sing a song that's related to sadness. But that's not the correct way to do it, right? Because while singing that song would enforce. Is that right? It's as if I put more fuel into it.
Being a composer myself, I don't want to discourage.
Composer is different from using a song to release the sadness. Because even though to a certain degree the sadness is released, but I think I'll put more fuel into it, and then that will create what so-called reinforcement.
What I would say is that one has, in terms of dealing with particular feelings, one has to find techniques that are appropriate for the situation. But this is speaking about what I would say, well, the particular emphasis here is on not having the aversion towards the painful feeling. Because when one reacts to it with aversion, either anger, resentment, fear, then it's reinforcing the underlying tendency to aversion. But it doesn't mean, and then sort of the most powerful way to deal with the unpleasant feeling is just to look at it directly and sort of what I would call depersonalize it by considering it as just a feeling that arises through conditions, exists for some time, then passes away. So that is using wisdom to sort of destabilize that unpleasant feeling. So that's the most direct way, but it doesn't mean that one can't use other methods to ameliorate the impact of unpleasant feeling. Okay, any further questions? Okay, then we'll end for the day. We'll end with 3 half bows. Yeah, I just wanted to repeat that next week we won't be having the class. So the next class will be in 2 weeks. I don't remember whether I assigned... Did anybody look at the schedule for 2 weeks? Yeah, I know that we're behind a little bit.
149 and 150.
I have 2 in one day. Okay. Actually, 149 is very interesting, very powerful sutta. And then we're coming to the end, but we still have 2 suttas that we passed over earlier. One is sutta number 1. Then Suki, who's not here today, reminded me that I didn't do sutta number 43 because it's fairly technical sutta. But now I think we're all prepared to take that sutta as well. Okay, so we'll end with 3 half bows. Okay, 1,